Welcome to the Soul Star Podcast with your spiritual besties, Allie and Mandy. We're here to make your spiritual journey fun, relatable, and inspiring. So let's raise your vibe and ignite your soul together.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us for another week, another amazing, fun topic. For some fun, we have lots to talk about today. But before we get into it, I'm going to tell a little story.
Ooh, I love stories. And you're so good at
It's
remembering yours. I don't remember mine ever.
It happened last night and I was laying there. I'm like, I should tell this on the podcast. But first of all,
Love that.
Can we just talk about how long the month of January is taking? Is it just me?
No, it's taking
like
so
longest...
You know why?
What is happening?
No, you know why? It's because so much has freaking happened in the month of January. It feels like it should be months. I think that's why, because there's been so much in the collective, from the fires to the inauguration to the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively.
And all of the cosmic events that are happening.
The alignment. Like it feels like there's been so much happening in the collective that's been in our face and been like, oh my God, oh my gosh, that it's like, how can this all just be fucking January?
Right? I was sitting here thinking about like January and I'm like, it's like, seriously, is still January. Usually the months fly by so quickly and you're like, oh my God, I can't even believe it's the end of whatever month it is. Yeah. But it feels like this month has literally been 3 months in one.
Yeah.
Like it's so long. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from January. It needs to be done.
You can still say Happy New Year to people. What? That feels like an eon ago.
I sent it in email today. I was like, I hope, because I haven't talked to them since the holidays. I'm like, I hope you had a great holiday season. And I'm like, what the? That was like only 3 weeks ago.
Like, that's crazy. I know. That's like, yeah, it's acceptable to keep saying it. And it feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah.
I bet everybody's feeling that.
You need to let us know in the comments. Come join us on Instagram or in our or even podcast. Like you can comment on the podcast
and Spotify, right? Because I think you can. Yeah, you can put comments in Spotify if you listen to the podcast in Spotify. Yeah.
Are you guys feeling like January's a whole year in 1 month?
It's ridiculous. Like, move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next month. When do we ever want it to go by fast?
I know. Well, this is like snail's pace.
But March is supposed to be the like, with all of the astrological things happening, right? When Asha had talked about, it was March that she said that is the month to watch. So
March and then July or something. But either way, like let's just get through it. Let's get on with it. Let's do it. Let's just move on to January.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, my story, I was laying in, it happened last night and I was laying in my room. I was kind of like resting, meditating, because your card reading on Monday was so on point with like how I was feeling last night, where it was like, I was just sad and I was down and I was just like, broody, but there was no particular reason as to why I was feeling this way. And I was having like such deep thoughts, like, wow, like what is my purpose? And like, but what is my purpose during the day? Like, I'm trying not to tie my career to my purpose. Like, that's not my purpose. So like, how do I show up authentically, which is what we're talking about today. So interesting. But how do I show up in my day authentically? Like, what is my daily purpose? Is it like, what can that, and then I was like, why am I so angry? And it was like going deeper and deeper.
So you felt like that unease, like, because I had said, like, because I had gone through it Sunday night, I think it was, that I was feeling that. And I was like, yeah, so you just go to bed. Because that's what I did. I finally was like, you know what, Allison? Like, I don't even know when I'm sitting here. I'm doing my nails. I like doing my nails. I'm watching a show. I like watching a show. And I was just kind of like, ugh. And there was no reason. And I'm like, I just feel yucky and I don't know why. And I want to cry. So I did a little cry for no fucking reason. And I was like, and you're going to put yourself to bed because this is icky energy. And right. So it's crazy you're getting
Yeah, very icky energy. And I did all the things that I usually do to get myself out of a funk. Like I had a shower to wash the day off myself. Like even Nick was like, maybe go have a shower because he was like, are you
Mm.
okay? And I was like, I just feel really sad and I don't know why. And then he's like, are you going to be okay? He's like, why don't you go light some candles and, lay in bed and just kind of like relax. And so I did. And that's where my story comes in. And so I was like laying in my bedroom last night and I had a little bit of like soft music playing. I wasn't scrolling, I wasn't distracting myself. I was just relaxed, trying to
Mm.
relax. But I
Mm.
also felt like there was a lot of energy moving through me. Like I felt a lot of anxiety in my heart and all these things. So I lit a couple candles, but I love lighting candles. So during the dark days, like the winter months, there's always
During the
candles lit in
dark
my house.
days.
Yeah, like literally the dark days. I will just have a couple lamps on and some candles. It just feels very like calming to me.
Yeah.
So I've had candles going throughout the holidays because they were like yesterday. And it's
Like
January feels so
yesterday.
long. It was like yesterday. But like I have only a few candles left because I had like a bunch of little ones.
Yeah.
And so I only had two that were lightable because I burnt out all of the rest of them. They're all gone now. And so I went took them upstairs and I lit. One was had a little bit more wick than the other, looked a little bit more like candle wax. Is that what it's
Wax?
called?
It's wax.
Yeah.
What? Oh,
Okay.
wick. Wick.
Wick.
The
The
wick?
wick.
The
Yeah.
wick.
Okay. So one
I got
candle
something.
was one
I'm
candle was
winning.
almost
We
one
have to
candle.
celebrate this for a second. Come on. Come on. It is always me that's like, what is that? And then Mandy's the one being like, it's this. And I'm like, thank God Mandy's here. Hello. I
Okay.
finally
Cool,
had
cool.
something. Okay, carry on.
Okay. So one candle had more burning time left than the other candle. And so I lit both. One of them lit fine. The other one was like not gonna light because I was like, oh, it's out. So I was just gonna have one candle. But I lit them both and then I lay on my bed and I was like, okay, I called forward my spirit guides to just be there to comfort me. And so
Yeah.
Cody and then Marlena, I work with her quite a bit now too. So I
Yeah.
called them forward and Cody came forward quickly. And then the other candle relit itself. And then that's how I knew Marlena was with me because it was like almost about to go out and then it like re-sparked and it was just as bright as the other candle.
Oh my
Isn't that
God.
crazy?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I've been really wanting to like, woo.
Oh,
Um,
that's loud.
was that really loud? Yeah,
Yeah.
because it was my phone. It slid. I like try to balance it on my laptop, and I obviously didn't balance it correctly. So I'm sorry. But I've been like wanting to try testing out like with lights and stuff,
hmm
like and being like trying to call in, somebody, good spirit. If you do it properly, you don't just open yourself up like a Ouija board and just call in anybody, but um, you know, but like playing with it to be like, dim the light or all of that because we can do all
Yeah.
those things and that doesn't scare me, that part of it. I think it scares
Yeah.
me to see an apparatus like a figure.
Apparition.
Damn it. I was doing so good. I knew I fucked up when she just stared at me like, huh? And then I'm like, shit. That's why everything went silent because I'm like, what did I say?
What word was it? I don't know.
Apparition?
Apparition.
I said apparatus. Is
You said apparatus.
that
I
a
mean,
word?
it's close.
It's very
Close.
close. That's my problem. I do just want to comment on something that you talked about, like when you were kind of feeling yuck and
Yeah.
talking to Nick. And I was thinking about this the other day because we're going to go like I find you and I have both found and we understand that based on the energy, the frequency, being sensitives, we are sometimes just affected by it and there's no explanation, and
hmm
that is hard to
hmm
explain to the people in your world. Like, how
hmm
do you explain? Like, that's what I was thinking, like, if I'm dating somebody or even my ex-husband, even my family, even though they know about all of this, like, how do you explain, like, man, I'm just really getting hit hard with the energy, like the collective energy is really kind of piling up, and I just feel really shitty. It's a weird thing, right? Like, because if somebody doesn't fully really understand it, it's like, okay. And you're like, so I can't see you tonight because I just need to be home and I need to cry. Okay. Or like, I'm exhausted. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
why are you exhausted? And then people like want you to, have these normal explanations. And you're like, because we've had 5 solar flares in the last hour. That's why. And then you're like,
But okay, I totally see where you're coming from. And yes, that is hard, especially when it's not like received with an understanding.
yeah,
Hopefully
which
you
I
have people in your
understand
life
that
that,
people
yeah.
don't
But
understand. I get
also,
that.
I want to say though, like those people, when they hear you talk about it, something might click for them
Oh, yeah.
where they're like, oh, is that why I've been feeling this way? Or I've been feeling
Mm,
in a certain kind of way? Like, because my husband's been having a few days where he's been like tired or just broody, and there's really no explanation for it either. I know that, he's quite sensitive energetically and he's connecting to the collective energy and he just doesn't
yeah.
know. So when we
Yeah.
talk about it or when I explain it on my end, then he's receiving it and it's kind of making sense for him too.
I guess it kind of opens the door for them to understand. And then
Yeah.
I already kind of go ahead. Like, I guess that's where my authenticity, showing up authentically,
Yeah.
because I'm not even going there because I'm just assuming they're not going to understand. And so I just
Hmm.
don't say it. But I was like, in my head thinking, well, fuck, like, I don't want, I just want to be like, I don't know. I may sound crazy, but it's because of this, this, and this. It's not my energy, like, type of thing.
And I
It's,
think,
it's super weird.
yeah. Well, that's a good segue into what we're talking about because you aren't
Fantastic.
showing up. Yeah, when you make mistakes or you're not sharing exactly how you're feeling or why you're feeling that way or why you feel like you're feeling that way, you
Yeah.
aren't showing up authentically, right?
Mm-mm, mm-mm. You're
So,
not.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, obviously we're talking about authenticity today. we actually came across a concept, or Ali, you came across this concept and shared it with me, and it was very intriguing. So we thought we would bring it to the podcast. But it's this concept that, like living authentically and owning your authenticity is actually a higher frequency than love.
Yeah. And we've been, you know, like, when I came across this, I was like, it was kind of like, did you know that there's something above love that is a higher frequency? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, no way. Because I was like, love is the frequency of the spirit realm. Like, love, it's just pure love. Like, it's just pure love. And that's me coming. I'm like, what could be ahead of that? Like, what could be beyond that? And then it was like authenticity. And then I'm like, what? And that ping happened. And then it was just like, oh my God, it's kind of true. Like, how do you 100% love yourself? Like, have self love if you're not
Hmm.
truly authentic?
Yeah. So what is authenticity? Like, what's the definition of authenticity?
So, authenticity is, what is it, Mandy?
It's
So,
okay, we're gonna read it, but
yeah,
just
yeah,
because we wanted to make sure we got it correctly.
correctly.
So authenticity is the alignment of your inner truth, your values and your actions. It's
Mm-hmm.
living in complete harmony with who you really are, not who the world expects you to be. So, and there's so many times, like I'd say 100% of the people that we read, our clients, even our students and ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
when we begin this journey of a spiritual awakening, none of us are living authentically. None of us even know what authenticity means or even what our true values are. Because
Oh, absolutely.
this whole journey is a journey of self-discovery, right? So these
Yeah.
are things to just kind of like be aware of as you move forward. And I think as you learn more about yourself and you do more and more of the healing work, you become more authentic
Mm-hmm.
naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to be brave enough to become authentic.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of bravery to do that. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is where it's so layered.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like I know when got to my kind of spiritual awakening and I started asking those bigger questions and stuff, and you can start digging a little bit in just one little area of your life, and you start to realize like, holy shit, like what did those beliefs come from? Where did that mindset come from? And they're building blocks from your childhood, not
Mm-hmm.
just from your parents, but like obviously your family dynamic, your friends, all these people that kind of you grew up around who had any influence on you. It's like all pieces of all of that. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I think like you look at that and you're like, damn, like that's a lot of unraveling to try to understand, like, okay, wait a minute, is this my belief? Or is this just a belief that was placed on me at a young age unintentionally that I've
Mm-hmm.
absorbed, you
Yeah.
know? And then when you
Well, it's
are,
interesting.
yeah,
Go ahead.
well, when you're like unraveling that to be like, no, I want to be authentic to who I am. Well, now you're disrupting the people around you, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
a version that everybody knew. And when you start to be like, actually, no, I don't want to be this version. And then people are like, what do you mean? Like, I'm used to you being this version. It's safe being this version. You're making me uncomfortable. And this can be the most loving person in your life that loves you unequivocally, unequivocally. They're playing with me. No, you guys, they're so playing
Keep
with
that one
me.
in
Stop
class.
putting the words in my head. Unequivocally. What?
Unequivocally.
Unequivocally?
Yeah.
Why am I wanting to add like an additional syllable?
Because you're so extra.
Oh my God, so crazy. Okay, back to it. Who love you unconditionally. There we go. Like that's a better word. God, a way better word.
Come on. That's so
H.
funny.
Come on, H. Stop putting these stupid words in my head. He's just trying to make, yeah, he gets me back. But like, even if like having people that just love you so much, it still can disrupt that dynamic and it can be so uncomfortable. And then that's where it's kind of like, that's where the bravery comes in. It's like, okay, do you fold to keep the peace? Because like, holy shit, the other option is
Do you dim your
hard.
do you dim your light to make them more comfortable? And this
Yeah.
ties back to the conversation we were having a couple weeks ago about around change and how it's our responsibility to make sure that if somebody's changing around us, it's not changing us. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're not so unsettled because somebody else is changing. So if we're the ones that are
Mm,
changing and the people around us are uncomfortable because they're not used to this new version of ourselves, that's not a you problem necessarily in the sense
mhm.
of that they're uncomfortable. There's obviously a way that we can help them through it, but it doesn't mean that we should be dimming our light to make them comfortable.
No, no, I've said that as an example with like my family when I started
Mm-hmm.
to realize how much of a people pleaser um, I was, and still struggle with it today. But when that kind of came out, where I was like, "What? Wait a minute! Like I am the one in the family like, no problem, okay, sure, no problem," and they were used to that, and that fit their script. Obviously, like I'm not blaming anybody. Like if somebody's like, sure, no problem, like if somebody does that to me, I'm gonna be like, great, right? I'm not gonna be
Mm-hmm.
like, are you sure? Be true to yourself. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna take that win and run. But when I started to kind of change and push back and be like, actually no, like no, this doesn't work for me, it kind of like whoosh, like this energy kind of like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this? And I remember being like, I choose to sit there and be angry with them, to be like, how dare you? Yeah, I've always gone with the flow. And the one time I'm like, no, this doesn't work for me. And this happens. So I could have either gotten mad, I could have folded because it's uncomfortable. But
Mm-hmm.
instead, I ended up holding compassion for them. I started to realize, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm changing the script. I'm changing it. And that's going to be uncomfortable for them. And so I kind of was like, got to this like place where I was like, and I get it. And that's okay. And I had to be okay with that. So I was okay that they were mad. I wasn't mad. It was more just I'm changing the script and it's making them uncomfortable. And, I'm holding compassion for that feeling.
Hmm.
Obviously, if they never came around and they constantly were
Hmm.
feeling that way, then it would be like okay, enough's enough. You do you, I'll do me.
Yeah. Well, then I think there's going to be relationships in our lives that are like that, where some are going to, surrender or like flow with your change and support you regardless of
Yeah.
which direction you're going, as long as it's a good direction. And then there's some people that are going to be so uncomfortable with who you're becoming that they
And they
just walk
drop
away.
away. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
it could be like where, they give you space to become who you are, they do some changing themselves, and then you come back together later in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And like we knew, I remember you saying to me early on this like journey about going through a spiritual awakening, like you're going to lose people. Right.
Hmm.
And I remember you saying it. I remember our mentor saying it at some point, like you're going to lose some people because that you're just not going to resonate anymore. And I remember being like, that's awful. But when it gets to that point, it's so natural at that point that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not awful for the
No,
most part, but
no.
yeah, and then hopefully again, like they can do their own work, and then you can come back together in a more aligned partnership, relationship,
Mm-hmm.
friendship, whatever that is.
Because if it's
But
meant to be, it will come back. I
yeah.
really like hold on to that part of it where
Hmm.
with anything, with anybody, if it's meant to be, it's going to come back. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It will come back. Yeah.
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 They say that authenticity is like the root of love. Because when
Mm-hmm.
you like without authenticity, love is conditional,
Ah,
right?
yeah. If you're
It's
like
per it's
showing up
can
as yourself.
So when you show up as yourself, the love that you're giving and the love that you're receiving is unconditional. There's no conditions upon it, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
you're not being authentic and you're in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, romantic relationship, family relationship, if you're molding to become the version of who they expect you to be, then that's
Mm-hmm.
conditional. That's conditional, right?
Yeah, because they only have love for you because you're this version. But if you weren't and you're authentic, like it's kind of, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you can show up authentically in all relationships or in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
even with your employer, I think, then it's not
Mm.
conditional. I would say just through experience here, now that we're talking about it, probably the
Now that we're
most
talking about it, let's
now we're
open this
talking
up.
probably the most inauthentic relationship you ever have in your life is the one that you have with your employer.
That is so true.
Because there's so many expectations placed on you on who you should be, how you should behave, how you should perform,
Even
like
like
all
in a
that sort of stuff.
box, right? Like I
Hmm.
find like in the corporate world, they kind of can come out with this like stamp of like, well, everybody, this is what you're supposed to do and this is what you should be. And it's like, yeah, but some of us don't really work within a box. Like some of us are our talents or our magic is when we are outside of that box and we're doing it a different way.
Hmm.
But then in the corporate world, it's like, no, no, we need this stamp because everybody's doing it. We need everybody to do it the
Hmm.
same. So there's no way to be able to be authentic.
Hmm.
I've tried many times. I've tried many times and I've gotten pushback.
You got written up.
We
You're on
don't
your third
want you.
strike.
Yeah, I know. We don't want your authentic self. Stop being difficult. Stop.
Well, that's an interesting insight because, like, just because you're being authentic, a lot of people will view that as being difficult
Yeah.
if you're sharing your views or why you don't maybe agree with a certain policy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're being truly authentic, that wouldn't bother you. um you know what I
It's hard.
mean?
It's a hard one because like even if you talk about that with just in life, let's just say. So like somebody that okay, women for instance, there can be a thing that where people are like if you're just being truly um authentic and so say you're like no I don't like that idea or no I don't want to do that, like it's easy to kind of place or dub somebody as just difficult in general, and there's a very
Yeah.
thin line of like speaking up for what you believe in but
Mm-hmm.
then always being confrontational. Like I see, because
Mm-hmm.
there'll be like things that people will um like bring about, like I'll read a forum or something like that, and somebody will like say something, and I'm like, shit, you could take this either way. You could take this as, oh my god, this person is cuckoo, calm the fuck down, it's not a big deal, let it go. But then on the other side, you're like, but no, they are standing up for what they believe in, and they're just trying to be authentic to who they are, and
Mm-hmm.
even at the expense of like people, maybe being disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that
I see.
balance?
Well, I see too a few different like I like it's almost like I see it through a few different prisms in a way. Like part of it is like the person who's being authentic. I would imagine that you're holding this frequency of authenticity, which will be received by everybody that is receiving your viewpoint, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also, if you're being truly authentic to how you believe or what's held in your heart or however you feel about it, you're most likely not reacting angrily. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
no.
Because unless that's your authentic self is like a super angry person, but I doubt that. Do you know what I mean? If authenticity is a higher vibration than love, then you're probably going to be sharing your authenticity in that high frequency, which should come off as very calm and very
Mm-hmm.
matter of a fact and very unapologetic, but not in like an angry or confrontational way,
Yeah.
right? So it's really the person that's receiving it that has the problem, right? So the person who's receiving it and saying, "Oh my God, they're so difficult," or "They're being really difficult," that's an opportunity of healing for the person who's receiving it. Because if you're actually showing up authentically in any situation and sharing how you feel, the person receiving it is taking it in a harsh way. It's most likely their problem, right?
Well, and that totally is like goes back to like the episode on triggers, right? Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you're being triggered by something, it is your problem. But the issue is majority of society is showing up in that triggered state. So say you have somebody that is constantly showing up and being authentic, and when you kind of said like, well, if they're reacting in anger, it's like maybe they're not being like, there's not a lot of people that be authentic and be angry, but I could see it being where you feel deflated, you feel sad, you feel, because if you are constantly showing up authentically and you're constantly
Mm-hmm.
getting negative kind of responses, that can get very lonely. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you start to see people um, changing and morphing into, because it's like that's very isolating. And unfortunately, if you do live in a society that we're not evolved enough to, that everybody's kind of like, they're being authentic, cool. Like, I don't have any healing to do, I'm not being triggered, cool. Like, we're just not there. It's so, it'll
Yeah.
be very lonely and very kind of, that's where I think we start to see people um start to go away from being authentic, because you want to feel loved and you want to feel connected to people. and
Mm-hmm.
and actually this whole concept, the post that this concept came up in was actually around autism, and how people with autism, this concept that people with autism are showing up, they are showing up fully
Mm-hmm.
authentic, but because of how society is built and the constructs of society, they've
Yep.
then we start dis why are the words
So,
so
Allie,
hard?
I'm
I know,
waiting for
I
it.
was gonna say dismembering, and I'm like, oh, isn't that like taking body parts apart?
See, it is.
But
I get what you mean.
dismantling, like,
There we go.
so you slowly start, chipping away, like, oh no, you're not supposed to act like that, like your parents, like all of these things, you can't act like that when we're in a store, we can't act like that. And so there was kind of this like um this concept that, okay, well, they are showing up 100% authentic, but we can't honor that in this type of society, because
Hmm.
and I
Not
was
at the
not at
moment,
the
yeah.
moment, and I was thinking, okay, if I was a mother of a severely autistic child, your instinct is to make their life easier, and
Hmm.
that would be trying to teach them how to fit in,
Hmm.
right? And so I'm like,
Well,
oh
we
my
all
god,
try to teach our kids how to fit in. All of us, all
yeah.
of us parents. Well, maybe not all of the parents, but the majority of parents who love their children in that way and are very active in their kids' lives. I would say try to make sure that they fit in so they're not being picked on and they're not
I
being ridiculed and they're
know.
not being like targeted by, the bullies in the school. So we all are programming our kids in a
Absolutely. Well,
sense,
and
but
even programming when we're saying like say thank you,
yeah,
eat what you're given, like all of these things of just politeness, right? Like that
yeah,
how I would expect my child to act when I'm not there.
hmm
Again, those are other forms of like, molding in, like, no, you do not speak back to your teacher. You're in trouble. So
hmm
these are all,
respect
yeah,
authority.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Respect your elders.
yeah,
Where, but if they're not respecting me, why am I going to respect them? And then you're like, well, because they're older than
that's
you.
true. What I've had this conversation with Jace where teachers did not appreciate his questions. So they would be silly rules like you can't wear your hood in class, like your hoodie,
Why?
or you can't wear, and he would ask, why not? I can wear a hat, or girls can wear hats, but boys can't wear hats. So he would have questions, and they were like, basically told him to shut up
Yep.
and to just follow the rules. So
Because
he
they
was
didn't
getting in
have an
trouble.
answer. They didn't have an
No,
answer. And so in their
but
head,
those
they're
are,
going, well, I don't know why. Right.
I don't just follow the rules because I'm your elder. I'm your authority. You respect authority figures and you just do what you're told. But me as his parent always encouraged him to ask questions because I could see how that actually how is the world going to change if we don't have kids who are asking questions and wanting to change the rules
I
that
know.
make no
But
sense,
then
right?
that's where you become the difficult one, right? That's the same in a
Mm-hmm.
workplace environment. When you start
Yeah.
to question the narrative, when you start to push back and be like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, why am I doing this? And the moment you start to do it, now you're dubbed as difficult. So he would be dubbed as
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And
Yeah, and he was.
yep. And then that makes his life more difficult because now
Yeah.
he's having to like do extra. If he's been dubbed as this difficult student, every class he goes into with new student or new teacher, he's going to already have that blacklisted. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is where it feels like it's so hard to show up authentically when we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly being faced with, it's just going to make your life way more difficult. Ugh,
Yeah. So there's
makes me
that fear
mad.
of, well, you get that fear of rejection and of judgment. So, like, moving forward, Jace, as he grew older, would like, he still asks questions, but he's learned how to do it in a more respectful, like, way where it can be received. But also, he's older. So, the adults are receive it in a different way too.
Mm,
So there's that thing. There's that thing about it. But when I think when there's like the challenge of being authentic, like you said, there's so many based just on how society expects you to behave or
yeah.
who expects you who to be or whichever. But like there's those societal conditioning and expectations. But then we also have like the tendency to compare ourselves to others. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to like self-worth and self-love and
Oh yeah.
just
So if you're
ugh.
sitting there and it's like, let's just say two siblings, two sisters, and
Mm-hmm.
sister A, is authentic and kind of shows up like just asking, quit being themselves, but doesn't get the same maybe like love and respect back as sister B. And then you start watching sister B and you're like, oh wow. So like, okay, so those people, like my parents, respond really well to this. Like this is you're thinking as a
Mm-hmm.
child, right? We are constantly observing things. That's how we learn as
Mm-hmm.
children. And if you're observing that, like, oh, she did XYZ, and they were like, oh, that's so nice. We love you. And you're like, oh, I want that. I want that feeling. So now I'm going to do XYZ and then I'm going to get that feeling. And we start to learn, and adapt these things so that we can, be loved and accepted unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the building blocks of, you know, that we kind of start to become who we are.
I know. And so as we like move forward in life, and I don't know, sometimes part of me thinks that the spiritual awakening is really just like a midlife crisis.
Or the midlife. So yeah, so it totally is. So it's
Midlife
kind of
crisis
like
is a
when
spiritual
people say they're
awakening,
having a midlife crisis, it's actually just the spiritual awakening happening.
right? I think
Yeah.
so. Because I think that you get to a point in where your life around middle age, like around our age, where you do start to ask questions about who you are and how you show up to the world, right?
Yeah.
So then you need to start, like, now you've like spent half of your life becoming somebody you don't even know,
I know.
right? Because you are just a product of everybody's expectations, society's expectations, your parents, your families, your friends, your workplace's expectations, and now you hit a wall at some point, and you're just like, what the where who am I? And now you have
Mhm.
to spend the whole rest of your life trying to unravel all of that programming and all of that like healing you need to do in order to actually step into your authenticity. So I
And
think like
then you die and you start all over again. Who created this damn game? What the hell? This is the
right.
dumbest thing in the world.
So if you want to know what your purpose is, it is to step into authenticity.
And
No
everybody should
questions. That's
step
just
into
what it is.
authenticity. I'm
We
like,
all have the same purpose.
oh my God, but it's true. And it feels like it really feels, it feels like you can't achieve it in all aspects, right?
Okay. Well, the
In
way the world
all
is at
aspects.
this moment, yeah, at the way the
Mm-hmm.
world is now, it is but I think it's gotten better over even over the last 5 years. You
Yeah.
know, like thinking back to COVID times when it was just there was a narrative, there was so much polarity and duality, and I think so many people have grown spiritually and just like done a lot of healing work where the conversations I think that we were having 5 years ago would be more like received better. Like
Yeah.
thinking about like the conversations about COVID that I had with my parents, for example. I think 5 years later that those conversations wouldn't have been so fear based on my parents' side.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have been received better, and maybe same with you too. So I think like
Absolutely.
collectively, the world has shifted quite a bit in the last 5 years, and I hopefully moving forward it'll continue to shift where more people can show up authentically and where it is just more of a high vibration and we have more
Yeah.
compassion and empathy. But you're right, like we still step out into the world and, you know, there's like, for example, there's this parent on the ball team and she's not very nice. And I just like,
It's so
she's
funny. You
quite
have
mean,
so many examples from the ball team.
right?
What is up
Well,
with competitive sports and people just
parents
being
go crazy
crazy?
because,
Ugh.
okay, as we know, every like a lot of people show up from their unhealed child self. Like so,
Mm-hmm. It
not
is.
everybody. There's actually quite a big group of people on this, like the parents on the ball team, that are so lovely. They're so lovely. But when it comes to the competitive aspect of sports, children's sports, the parents are driving it with their ego. They are from their unhealed child self, like their inner
Mm-hmm.
child, is running the show basically. And I can see it so clearly in so many of these parents, not just with ball, but you know, my experience with lacrosse and with hockey and with like with a lot of things.
Yeah.
But and it, you know, I now I can hold compassion for these people because I see where they're coming from. Before I was like, I did misunderstood. I didn't understand, and I was like, there's so like I was angry with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now like this, I can hold compassion. So there's this one particular parent this year, and I'm waiting for the opportunity to
To
like,
pounce?
yeah, not pounce, but not to be mean back, but to
No.
receive her anger and to be able to just be like authentic with it and be like, I don't
Yeah.
know who you think you are. Like, why are you getting so angry about this? Like, just to be
Yeah.
calm and to like, just to
And
like,
to speak
re-
up. That's
yes,
a
to,
scary thing to
I'm,
do.
yeah, but I'm waiting for, I'll share the story when it
I
happens.
hope you like, and like the thought of that, like just hearing
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm like, oh hells no. I know for myself, I never, never. And so this is where it feels like it's so like what a daunting task to be 100% authentic all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like
Well,
even
yeah.
when it's like confrontational, like not confrontational, but just, you know, like if you were to say, so if she was to do something and you're like, hey, you know, even in a
Mm-hmm.
nice way, like, I don't understand why you're reacting this way. You know, like this is coming across really blah, blah, blah. Like you're being very kind, you're saying it, but you know, that person's going to be like, it's going to be like an energetic whoosh, right? Like
It's going to piss
you
them
just
off
called
more.
me out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And called me out on my bullshit. So there's a bit of embarrassment, right? That person's
Mm-hmm.
going to have this reaction of embarrassment. their pride and their ego, and then they're going to lash out like no matter what. And so that's where it's like, oh my God, that's scary. And then showing up for
For it.
games after that, you're like, now that's awkward. Great.
Well,
That's
that's
awkward.
it's not awkward. It's not awkward
No.
for me, but that's where I feel confident in my authenticity and like however
Yeah.
that that will go.
Yeah.
I will not feel because I know I'm not going to get angry back or I'm not going to yell or have a temper
Mm-mm.
tantrum or act out of context or whatever. I'll calmly state you're being a little bit
Yeah.
unrealistic or unreasonable or whatever. Maybe you could speak in a kinder tone and it'll be received
Mm-hmm.
better. However that is, however that
Yeah.
shows up. But I
Mind
will
your
have zero
business.
problems. Yeah, I'll have
I
zero
just heard
problems,
that.
right? I'll have zero problems being in the same space as her because I know how I behaved
Yeah.
was
See, and I love that.
aligned.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that's my people pleasing, my fear of conflict, all these things.
I
That's where it
usually
feels
like
like a
I don't really like
lifetime.
yeah, I don't like conflict when I know I'm
No,
hurting
you
somebody's
don't.
feelings.
Yeah.
It's different. If I've done something to hurt somebody's feelings unintentionally, and I
Mm-hmm.
know we have to chat about it, like that is like my heart breaks because
And then
they're,
you're like,
you know
ooh,
what I
I feel
mean?
sick. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm standing in my power, I don't feel bad about that.
See, yeah, I feel bad if like say I have to like say somebody like okay, for example, I remember one time my dad had made a silly joke and you know, it kind of hit harder than I wanted it to hit because it
Hmm.
was a narrative that I had even kind of gone along with my whole life. And so I just, you know, because in my head I was like, oh, I know he's joking, but it still
Hmm.
hurt.
Yeah.
But the thought of saying, hey, that really hurt me. I was like, no fucking way, because then I knew that he would be crushed and I could
Hmm.
feel that. And so, and I remember you saying to me, okay, or maybe it was my therapist, I forget. Or like, it was
But I'm
like,
the same.
yeah, but like, so, okay, so you're scared of doing that. So you're just going to then take the hurt and not let
Hmm.
that person know that they hurt you so they don't do it again. So it's okay for you to
Hmm.
hurt, but it's not okay for somebody else to hurt. And I'm like, not when you can feel it. I'm like, so now I've just felt my hurt and their hurt. So double whammy. Thanks
Hmm.
a lot. No. Right? Like, ooh, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
No, I don't either. But you know, if you look at it from that higher perspective, like sometimes we're taking away the opportunity for them to learn if we hold back.
It's I know it's so bloody true.
It's hard. Life
I
is
like
so
to
like
control my surroundings.
yeah, you do.
I do.
You do.
Yeah, I do.
We're very complex people,
So
like humans.
complex. That's the thing. That's where it feels so layered. And so like authenticity feels there's just so many intricacies to it and layer upon layer because
Hmm.
you know, it's your limiting beliefs, it's your stories that you tell your all these things that literally have made you up from childhood. And how
Hmm.
do you decipher? Like I remember, you know, talking with my therapist and being like, oh, like I'm a chameleon. Like I can easily read the room and adjust. And I said that's, you know, it feels like a superpower in the sense of like what being in customer service, I'm able
Hmm.
to, if I'm sitting there across the table and I can gauge where we're at, I can adjust to where I need to be. So if I have some serious dude that's come in there, you know, I'm probably not going to go in and be like, ah, you know, all the things like my bubbly, chattily self. But I will find a common like come out. What? Why can't I speak today?
Commonality.
Commonality to connect with, and it's like many times that person that maybe came in grumpy, we're leaving laughing together because I find these ways.
Hmm.
And so I remember like telling him this, and he was like, yep, you could see that as a superpower, or you could see that you're so conditioned that you're able to zero in on all the nuances, and you're so conditioned to adjust yourself to fit so that you fit into everybody's comfortable state. And I was
Yeah.
like, fuck.
But I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that as you were talking earlier. And like as empaths, we, you know, we do look at our ability to mold ourselves to make other people more comfortable, like in that exact type of situation. But then are we actually being truly authentic to ourselves when we do that?
No,
Like, are we showing up authentically if we're matching the energy of the person across
I
the desk
know.
from us
I
or
don't
across the
know.
table?
But then I
Mm-hmm.
also look at it as like then interpersonal skills are strong and on point. Like, I remember my ex, Kevin, when we were dating and we visited his family and I met them for the first time. And I'd met his grandma and all these things. And I remember afterwards, he's like, what was that? Who was that? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, the way you were acting with my grandmother. Like, who was that? And I'm like, it's your grandmother. I'm not going to be like, what's up, bro? Not that I talk like that. But like, you know what I mean? Like there's different versions of yourself. And in my head, I was like, well, Kev, it's your grandmother, it's your elder. I'm going to approach your elder differently than I'm going to approach you per se, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
could not understand that. And I remember looking at
Interesting.
him thinking, what's wrong with you? Because you should be, adapting yourself. And then at the same time, it really stuck with me because I remember afterwards thinking, like, I'm not fake. I'm like, but I'm also not going to show up the same way I do with somebody I just met that's my elder versus somebody I'm
But why
comfortable with.
not? But why
I
not?
don't I
Right?
don't know.
Because you're not being authentically yourself
Yeah.
if you're not. Do you know what I mean? So like
Yeah. But then
that is
what version of you is the authentic version? Like sometimes I
I
wonder
think
that
that
too.
I think that's part of the journey is
Yeah.
self discovery is trying to figure out who you are authentically. So that comes back down to trying to really sort out like what are your values,
Yeah. And
right?
who
Who like
are you? Like,
yeah, what are
yeah.
your values? And I remember you were talking to somebody, I can't remember if it was like because of the dating apps or like whatever. There was a guy that came across your sphere somehow, and he
Mm-hmm.
was like, my values are family, something else, something else, something else. I can't remember where they are now. But I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's really interesting that he knows what his values are. So he
Mm-hmm.
places value in showing up for his family, in showing up for like, let's just say health, his health, let's just say community.
Yeah.
Like these are his values. I found that very interesting and very admirable that he knew what his values were. So I think
Mm-hmm.
as you're trying to sort out who you are, you really got
Mm-hmm.
to think about what are you and see these are some of the deep thoughts that I was having last night. Like, what are my values?
Yeah.
Like I
What do I
know
actually care about?
like how do I want everybody how do I want people to receive me? Like how do I want to show up to every single person the same way? Like what do I want them to feel? Like these were literally the thoughts I was having last night. How do I want everybody to feel when I come into their space? Like I want them to feel like I want them to feel calm, I want them to feel loved, I want them to feel
Comfortable.
comfortable. You know what I mean? Like
But
and
isn't
then
that in a way like if you want everybody to feel that way, like if you want that, isn't that in a way like you're kind of like, because everybody's so different, there's no way everybody's going to feel that way when they come into
well, that's
your
what I want
orb of
to
energy.
embody.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what I want to embody
And
when
that you
I
hope that people
and that
receive that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then again, like where do you place your values? Like I love my family, but I would say like I lack the I guess the ability or the time, the effort to connect with them on a more regular basis. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm,
I love
mm-hmm,
my sister and my brothers and my parents. I see them, we talk, but there's not a relationship like that is super close like you and your sister and your
mm-hmm,
parents. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean?
mm-hmm,
So like
yeah.
if family was one of my values, I would make more effort to really work on those relationships with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And it would be a priority within
It
your,
would be a
so then
priority,
maybe family isn't. But then that
right?
comes down
At
to
this
like,
point.
what a horrible person am I if family, like you start to judge
But
yourself to
my
be like, ugh.
But that's part of the healing. That's part of
It
the healing.
is.
So maybe, do I want, those are questions you ask yourself. Do I want my family to be like my immediate family, like my children and my husband? I definitely foster those relationships, and that is a core value of mine. But
Mm-hmm.
my like my parents and my siblings and stuff like that, we're close, but we're not as close. Do
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do I want that to be a core value of mine? And then like community, like do I want
Just before
to
you move
just
on with the family one, the opposite could be. The opposite could be that you're super close with your
mm-hmm.
extended family, and maybe you shouldn't be, right? Like how many
because
times have
they're
we
not
come
nice.
yeah, they take advantage of you or all of those things. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like there's two aspects of that and we've seen this in readings where some
Mm-hmm.
people are like, oh my God, yeah, but no, like I couldn't do that because that like my mom and we place so much of our who we are because we don't want to disappoint our family. So we're
Yeah.
doing things that
Or our religion.
our religion, yeah, like I know
Mm-hmm.
I've had people in my life where the religion that it was brought up in and is really strong within the family unit, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to be a I don't believe in that, I don't want to be a part of it, but the fear of saying this and falling apart when and that's where it's like sometimes maybe your family, maybe that outside family, you don't need to have that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
societal thing of like, but you need to have that, right? I definitely feel that at times where I'm just like, oh God, no, no, I would never want to do anything that my family wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
want to be a part of my life or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
such a, yeah, so interesting. So we do things
Yeah.
both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like if anybody's like, I don't even know like if I'm authentic, or I don't think really, I think everybody is on a spectrum of authenticity, shows
Mm-hmm.
up on some, there's a spectrum of authenticity, but I think the journey is, the needle is moving more towards showing up as authentic as you can in every single relationship, regardless of the
Yeah.
relationship. I think that is the goal. And I've even
In
received this, and
every
I've said,
aspect of your life.
yeah, and like I'm the same person to you as I am to Nick, as I am to my employer, as I am to like ball parents. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's that you're going to get the same Mandy regardless. And I think that that is the point of kind of like this journey of self discovery that we're on. And I've
Mm-hmm.
received that from spirit a couple times, and I've said that to a few people in readings. I've really seen that as a theme for them, moving through like either like a year ahead, or in general, something that their soul is kind of guiding them towards. And I think our higher selves kind of step in more and more. The more authentic we become, the closer we merge to our higher self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think like you can show up authentically and still evolve and change as you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in that
Absolutely.
sense,
Yeah.
like so say like like for yourself when you're like, oh, okay, I show up here as the same person here, but it doesn't mean you're pigeonholed into being like, actually i don't want I don't want to get frustrated anymore when this and this happens. And it's like, actually I want to change that about me. Like it's an
Oh yeah.
evolving thing that
Mm-hmm.
and to be, I think, being open and flexible to evolve with it, as
Yeah.
we learn and grow on this path. And we don't know those versions of ourselves until we've gone through the experiences that shape us. But I think when you're walking through life and you're having that awareness of like, am I truly am I doing this before, like, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this to appease somebody else, or whatever it is? It's kind of like just having that in the back of your mind. i
Mm-hmm.
I can have no problem having a difficult conversation with my boss or authority within work, and have a huge problem having a conversation with a coworker, a friend, or a love interest. And I'm like, where's the difference there? I have no
I know the
problem
difference.
calling you out at work as my
I tell you,
superior. What is it? I'll tell you.
it's it's because there's an aspect of justice involved.
Oh, so when my justice comes forward, it's like,
Yeah, you get really heated, and
But
really
I
heated.
will have justice. I will feel a sense of justice sometimes. Like, let's just say a romantic partner. There'll be times where I'll feel like, excuse me, you just took
Oh, also,
advantage of me.
I know.
Okay.
It's connected to your heart chakra. So you feel it differently when it's like a love interest or a
Mm.
friendship, and you're feeling it's like an anxiety in your heart that you're
Yes.
mistaking for, because like when you're speaking up at work, there's no like there's no
Mm.
relationship like in the family relationship type of thing. So you're not
No.
feeling the anxiety in your heart. You're feeling
Mm-mm.
it, you're feeling that like strong sense of like justice in your solar plexus.
And
So,
the
but
drive
when
that
you're
comes forward. Yeah.
yeah. So then when you need to speak up to a family member or somebody that you love, you're also feeling an anxiety in your heart space because it's connected to
Yeah.
your heart chakra.
And then that's, yeah. And like that will choke me up in that sense where then I fold and I'll be like, I'm just
Hmm.
not going to say anything. I'm just going to let
Yeah.
them take advantage or whatever because I don't want to make them feel bad.
Yeah. Because that's the same with me. Like we have difficult conversations and like when I have to, well, wait, let's just say when, if you and I have to have a difficult conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I will feel anxiety in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me want to like cry because
Yeah.
I
Or
know
puke.
what whatever it is, right? But it's the same like confrontation with somebody that you love. You're going to
Yeah.
feel that anxiety in your heart as opposed to confrontation with somebody you have no relationship
Yeah.
with, like work.
Like
It's
obviously I
different.
want them to like me. Like you want your
Mhm.
boss to like you and stuff, but there's a I guess a disconnect, a level of disconnect to
Mhm.
that. And
Yeah.
it comes easier versus, you know, if you're telling your best friend, like, I didn't like how you did that. There, I think there's a risk in that sense of like even losing that friendship or anything. Like I
Mhm.
think there's always kind of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird because I'm like, how can I be this big bad bitch at work? And I can have big bad bitch energy and be like, excuse me. And I will fight for what I believe in very easily. And then in the same breath be like, oh, and I'm like, my body's like, you don't like this. You don't like this at all. You're not happy. And I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. Totally fine. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Hitting you
Psycho.
differently.
It
Yeah.
does hit me
Yeah.
differently. I know. Get
But I
it
think
together.
when I think when we show up, like I dropped a AirPod. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think when we show up, when we start to show up more authentically, like it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same, or to start doing that unraveling work. Where they're like, I don't know, like who am I? How do I want to
Yeah.
show up? What are my
Yeah.
values? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. 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 I feel
Hmm.
like this is like a never ending pit
Yeah.
of discussions. Maybe we'll have a part two because I feel like there's things that maybe we can like, because this was more of like a you know how I can go off where I'm like, but wait a minute. My brain
Tangent.
just tangents and then I'm like somewhere else and I'm like, but what about this? Because I
Well, it was a very authentic conversation that we just had.
yes, it was. Look at us. A plus. We're A plus students. We get a star. I know. Hmm.
Are we done
Okay.
then?
We are done. We're
Okay.
done. Wrap this up.
We do need to wrap it up. So that's authenticity. And I don't know, I guess, what do you think before we go? Do you feel like authenticity is a higher frequency than love?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I guess so.
I
But
have
it
to
also feels
say,
like it's not attainable. It
mm, I, I,
it feels
I feel like it's
unattainable.
attainable.
You do? I
Oh, I
feel like
don't
it's
think so.
unattainable in all aspects of your life, you know. In this society as it is now, it feels like you're never going to 100% always be 100% authentic to how you're feeling or whatever because I feel like there's too many layers involved in that like, you know, you being mad that somebody took your parking spot and I authentically want to show up and be like, fuck you, dude. Right? I'm being authentic to how I'm feeling right now. Part of it's like, mm, but does that give you the right to share but you're being authentic. But does that give you the right to fucking lose your shit? on somebody in a parking lot, or lose your shit on an employee. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like there's so many layers and nuances to it that I'm like, how can you be a truly 100% authentic and still survive in this unless you're like fucking off in the boonies and you don't have to deal with society?
I mean, that would be easier, but let's.
It would be easier. That's the thing. Can you be truly authentic being entrenched in this society as it is right now? And and
I
and
think
and
that's.
being part of society, like a functioning person, part
I
of
think.
society.
I think that some people can, and some people do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's challenging, and it will continue to be a challenge. But I also feel like as we continue to experience life and we grow and evolve, our spiritual selves, our human selves, our understanding, our awareness, and everybody else does too, I think we'll get closer.
And that's the key, is like,
Mm-hmm.
the key is in this society as it is now, and on where our consciousness is as a collective. Obviously, if that was to shift, then that's different,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we're not in these
Mm-hmm.
constraints of like, how we need to show up and have a job and all of those things, um I can see it if that was to change. But in this current reality, there's so many things that, we'd either be arrested, lose our job, not be in relationships because we're not fitting that mold per se.
But we can all practice.
We do need to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
All
we hope
right.
you like this.
Well,
Maybe reflect on your authenticity, and
what are
maybe
your
do
values?
something. Yeah. And maybe do something, like think of one thing that you're like, you know what, I'm not showing up authentic this way. And try challenging yourself to show up authentic this way. Just a baby step. Just a
Wait,
baby step.
what's
Oh,
one
shit.
area
What are you
you,
going to do, Allison?
yeah, what are you
Oh
gonna
my
do?
God. Dang it. I
Just
am
one little
going
one.
to, okay. Well, I think what I'm going to do is, when I know the energy is affecting me, and I know I'm in that slump because of this work, I'm not going to lie about it.
Good.
And we'll see what
Yay.
happens. So when I'm like, I need to log off for the rest of the day. There's been 5 solar flares and my body is hurting and I am about to cry. So I'm gonna need to log off. We'll see what happens.
I love it.
Well, that's
I
what I'm gonna try to
will,
do. Yeah.
I'll try to show up more authentically in work because I feel like that's probably the space where I am not
Struggle the
the
most. Yeah.
most. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially when you get an angry
Okay,
client and all you want to be is like, shut up. Shut your mouth.
click.
See,
You're
you
fired.
can't live life fully authentic, because there's so many times in my head I'm like, I want to roll my eyes and be like, oh, here we go again.
Uh,
Wouldn't you just fucking love it? I have played that out in my head so many times.
mhm. All right.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you for being here. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.